Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know the unique elements to Luke's Passion narrative? On Palm Sunday of the Lord's Passion in Lectionary Year C, we always proclaim the Gospel according to Luke. The Gospel on that Sunday, we proclaim the Passion narrative from Luke's Gospel. And as we all know, each Gospel has its own unique themes, theology, and worldview. And that theology and worldview is usually reflected throughout the entire Gospel, as well as in the Passion narrative. For Luke, Jesus is the long-awaited Messiah, the long-promised Messiah who all the promises of God with regards to the Messiah are fulfilled completely in Jesus. For Luke, again, Jesus is the universal Savior of all, who comes for all, welcomes all, sits down and welcomes all at the table. He's got a special bent for the marginalized, the stranger, the outcast, the foreigner. He welcomes all to the table. As a matter of fact, some people accused him of having a promiscuous table fellowship, where he would sit down and eat with anyone at any time, at any place, and talk about the love of God and the compassion of God towards them. For Luke, Jesus is full of mercy and compassion towards all, and as I said, welcoming of all. So, because of the stance that Jesus' lifestyle and his values, some of the Jewish leaders really object to this and conspire to do away with him. So Luke begins his Passion narrative with Satan entering Judas, who essentially Satan is returning from the defeat that he suffered at Jesus' hands at the temptation of Jesus in the desert. And it says at the end of that passage that Satan left him for a short time. This is Luke's way of saying Satan has returned to kind of get back at Jesus and to undo Jesus. So for Luke, the Passion narrative begins here with Satan entering Judas and setting the whole motions of the Passion and Jesus' death into action. For Luke, his key themes of the Gospel surface throughout the entire Passion. For Luke, Jesus is, like the prophets of old, Jesus is an innocent martyr who is sacrificed for his values and for his lifestyle. The key theme that runs through the Gospel, the Passion narrative of this Gospel is Jesus' innocence. As we proclaim the Gospel, you hear very clearly that Pilate 3 times emphasizes the fact that Jesus is innocent and he finds no guilt at all in this man. Pilate sends Jesus to Herod, and Herod's encounter with Jesus is that he too finds no guilt in this man. The thief that is crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left, speaks to the other thief and says, this man has done nothing like we have, declares in his innocence. And finally, upon Jesus' death, the centurion who looks up at Jesus and says, truly this was an innocent man. So innocence of Jesus runs throughout the Passion narrative, but this does not prevent the Jewish leaders from demanding and calling for the death of Jesus. Eventually, Pilate just gives up and hands Jesus over to them for them to do whatever they want with Jesus. In Luke's Gospel also, Jesus is full of God's mercy, compassion, forgiveness, and models that throughout his life, and it's true also to the point of his death. Jesus forgives those who are those who are trying to kill him. He eschews, as a matter of fact, he eschews violence, so as to save himself. This is not the way God desires of him. He heals the ear of the high priest's servant who was injured by a sword wielded by one of his disciples. He, as I said, he forgives those who are murdering by saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He calls upon the good thief and says to him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And one scene that is unique only to Luke's gospel passion narrative is that just as Peter has betrayed Jesus 3 times, you get this scene where Jesus looks with mercy and compassion and forgiveness upon Peter, and you get this facial recognition so that Jesus remains steadfast, and yet with mercy and compassion remains steadfast in the face of Peter's cowardice. And so finally, Jesus' last words on the cross, so truly telling of the stance that Jesus has towards his Father and towards us, is that it's a trustful, hopeful placing of himself into God's hands. His last words on the cross is, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." So these elements that run through all of Luke's gospel are highlighted in the Passion narrative and run through the Passion narrative. And I would ask you, as you actively listen to the proclamation of the Passion narrative from Luke's gospel, that you pay attention to these qualities that Luke associates with Jesus, and you kind of reflect on how these qualities really call you to be a disciple like the Lord, being one of mercy, forgiveness, reconciliation towards others, and truly living out and establishing the reign of God in our midst. So I hope this has helped to explain just a bit of the few unique elements that show up in Luke's Passion narrative, and I hope you'll return again to more of the You Know series questions as we continue to explore our images of God, of Jesus, and our scriptures. Thank you very much.